Gaming Geek here with a video on some suggestions for models that you can use for Star Breach. If you're just getting into the game, this might be helpful to just give you some ideas about what is available out there. Now, most of us who get into Star Breach already have a bunch of miniatures, and honestly, I have enough miniatures already to be able to field all 20 factions that are found in Star Breach. But I use Star Breach as an excuse to buy into the recently released Games Workshop Sisters of Battle because I've always wanted to collect this line and paint them. Whatever floats your boat, the nice thing about a miniatures agnostic game is that you can use whatever miniatures that you want and fit them into any of the 20 factions that are available. So don't use my suggestions to restrict your own imagination for what might be possible. But these will just give you a general sense of what each of the factions are like and some potential models that would fit really well with each of the factions in terms of flavor and background. Now, most of the models that I'm going to be referring are Games Workshop as well as Mantic's models, but there are hundreds of different lines, especially if you're including independent producers of miniatures. And so I apologize in advance if I don't address or highlight your favorite miniature line. So what I'm going to do is run through all 20 factions so that you get a general feel for what it is, and then go online and see what kind of options that there might be, and share with you sort of what I think are best deals that you can find in order to fill out your warband. So let's go ahead and dive right in and check out the 20 factions first. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead and go to starbreach.com and download your free rules PDF. And I'm going to walk through in order the different factions that are available. So the first one is the Legion of Mankind, and these are basically your generic Space Marines. Any kind of miniature army set is going to work. The next army is the Terror Legion, and these are going to be your Chaos Space Marines. The Terrors of Abaddon are basically your Chaos Demons. The Hive is going to be your Tyranids, Gene Stealers, the most alien of your miniatures, and they're more like space bugs. The Ancient Machine is going to be your Necrons or any robotic or automaton army. The Coven are possibly the Tau in the Warhammer 40k universe. The Lorani are basically the Eldar, and the Corrupted Lorani are the Dark Eldar. Urok Warlords are the Orc. Nomadic Raiders are going to be your Rogue Traders, or you can use any miniature basically that is like Mad Max or Hivers in Necromunda. The Resistance, I'm not entirely sure what kind of miniatures you would use specifically for them, but maybe a ragtag group of rebels or something like that. Inquisition is basically the same in Warhammer 40k, so maybe Space Nazis or something like that. I'm using this faction for my Sisters of Battle. The Hunters are basically bounty hunters and can use any kind of variety of miniatures and different races. The Path and the Dark Path remind me of the Jedi and the Sith. Continuum Syndicate is basically Chronomancer, so again, can be a variety of different alien models. The Intergalactic Marshals can be space police or look like uniformed officers. Terror Cult are basically people who are religious fanatics who worship the devil or demons. The Machine Cult might be the Adeptus Mechanicus in 40k. And the Hive Cult would be the Gene Stealer Cult in 40k. So those are your 20 different options that you have. And again, you can really use any models for any of these factions. But this will give you a general idea of how each of the factions are distinct from one another. So I'm glad that Star Breach gives us a lot of options. The first thing that you want to do as a new or potential player is to join the Star Breach Facebook group. And there's just a lot of information, even rules questions can be asked here, and updates, as well as people sort of sharing what kind of models they're using for which army. So there's a lot of good ideas here. There's a new Star Breach buy, sell, and trade Facebook group that was made. And again, both of these are private groups, so you need a request being added. And there are a lot of options here for people sort of swapping and selling armies. And the advantage to this is you can get some good prices here, as well as most of these miniatures are assembled and primed for you. So definitely go ahead and go here to look for what might be some good deals and some good buys available from other Star Breach players. But if you want to go the retail route, I think one of the cheapest options that you can go with is from Mantic. So Mantic's Dead Zone line has a number of starter sets that are going to be a little bit less than $40 US. Each one of these starter sets, I think, are plenty enough miniatures for any of these factions. I think most of the factions, even at 120 UC points for a normal battle, these models are going to be enough to fill out those ranks. And so as you can see here, most of these starter sets are at $37, which is a pretty good price for an entire faction. One of the more unusual ones that's present in Mantic is the Veer Min, which are basically space rats, and I think that would be an interesting sort of group that you might be able to play as any of the other more obscure factions. But as you can see here, you have these enforcers, which could be either Legion of Mankind or Intergalactic Marshals. Whatever it might be, this might be a good set, and it gives you quite a bit of variety. The Asterion could be the Lorani. Obviously, the Marauders are your Urok warlords. There's even squats here, the Space Dwarves, as well as a Plague faction. If you want to see a close-up of what these models look like, go ahead and click up here to see my review of Dead Zone, and there's a comparison that I have between what Mantic models look like compared to GW models. Also, you can buy some terrain from there as well fairly cheaply. And then I'm always searching for what might be some closeout deals, and so here are Amazon prices for Beyond the Gates of Antares. Now this I wouldn't say is super cheap, but look at your local gaming store, and a lot of times these things will be in closeout, so really good prices for these. For example, if you buy this starter set, I think it gives you tons of miniatures and some potential mechs here on this side, so you could combine these. It's more miniatures than you would actually need, but again, this is one of the options. Now we're going to go ahead and look at some GW stuff, and there are some good pricing that you can get, and I think one of the better pricing box sets are these Necromunda sets. And so for about the same price as the Mantic starter sets, I think you can get enough units to have a faction. So for example here, the base model set for the Palanite Enforcers are pretty much, these can be either the Legion of Mankind or again the Intergalactic Marshals. I would probably use them as the Marshals because they look like a police force. So that's one option, and again, this is $35. Another option, you know, even here, the Delac gang, they could be the Chronomancers, which is part of the Continuum Syndicate. Here's another cool gang, the Van Sar. Again, can be a number of different factions, even could be Lorani faction, or it could be the Machine Cult as well. So a lot of cool options here for a relatively reasonable price. And even within the 40K line of miniatures, I think there are some pretty good deals. So these start collecting sets for 40K are pretty good deals. So you can have a whole orc faction, including a mech, for less than $80, which is pretty good. If you want 2 armies, these starter boxes also are pretty good, but a little bit pricey. So if you want to go in with a friend, and it's way more models than you're going to need, and it's going to be more than your typical 120 UC battle. You can use these Chaos Space Marines for the Terror Legion, and again, you get quite a bit here. The Tau box set is a really good deal at $80. Look at all of those, and you get 3 mechs there. The Drukhari, who are the corrupted Lorani, again, $76 for that, so that's a pretty good price. Even this box set here, the Pathfinder team, for $30, that's a really good deal. Even though you don't get a battlesuit in this set, I think this is plenty of models to have a warband for Starbreach. So for me, in creating the Inquisition, I am using Sisters of Battle, and I did buy this box set for $50. That's going to be the core of my warband, and I wanted to supplement it with a Dreadnought, but those are about another $50, and I didn't want to spend that much money. So I ended up buying this box set, which gives me 2 mechs. Obviously you can mix and match different mechs, it doesn't really matter, and I really like these mechs a lot. So I'm going to be adding one of these to my Inquisition faction with my Sisters of Battle. Let's talk a little bit about Infinity. Now, I think Infinity miniatures are actually a little bit more expensive. They are all metal miniatures. Up to this point, I've been sharing with you plastic miniatures, which I think is a lot easier to deal with and assemble. But Infinity models are super cool, and they have a huge range of different kinds of factions. I think these box sets are a little bit better deal. They do sell them individually, which are a lot more expensive. And they have some cool mechs as well. So this is an option for you if you want to really take a look at some cool sci-fi models. Infinity has a really good line. And then of course there are hundreds of small independent miniature makers, and this one is Raging Heroes, which is mostly female figures, and they are not necessarily cheap, I wouldn't say. So someone on the Facebook page showcased these jailbirds, which was used for nomadic raiders. And let's see how much this faction set. It's about 50 euros. So it's not the cheapest, but if you really want a variety, you see something that's really cool, go ahead and check out tons and tons of sort of independent, smaller miniature makers. Another good possible deal is checking out Kickstarters, especially from Simon Games. Zombicide Invader, I think, works perfectly within the Starbreach universe, and you have tons of models that you don't need to assemble. Civilian Pledge with all of the survivors, these Kickstarter exclusive survivors, which you have enough to actually create a couple of factions. These can be really good deals. Obviously, the Xenos can be any of the alien races or the Hive, so that works out really well. And you're just going to get a boatload of minis. So if you want to just keep an eye out on Kickstarter for some of these Kickstarter deals that gives you a ton of minis, that'll be enough to create maybe 3 or 4 at least army types. So I hope that this video helped you at least get started in Starbreach and hopefully give you an idea about which warband you want to play or try out. So thanks again. Please subscribe to my video and like if it was helpful for you. Stay tuned too for some future battle reports that I intend on posting online. Also check out my Patreon page to see what giveaway we are raffling off for this month. We do this every month for all Patreon supporters. I'm going to wrap up this video with a couple of shots of my miniatures case that has a bunch of different sci-fi miniatures that I'm going to be using for Starbreach. So happy gaming, and we'll see you next time.